4, Mr. Don't be like that. The office time. Acting. 4, Mr. Trevor Cooper. Mr. Grahame Harper. And you bring Robert Dick. There we are. Take it, please. Thanks very much. You want this up? Yeah. Your regular mic or Paris Olympics mic? It's up to you. Paris Olympics mic? Okay, there we are.
I'll get the regular one.
Get the regular one.
I only have this mic. Can everybody hear me okay with this mic?
Wah.
You're in the front row. What use is that? Can people at the back hear me okay with this mic? Yes, thank you.
Your weapons are useless.
It's such a shame for you all that you can hear me. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
That's a lovely Palace London mic you've got. Hello. Before we talk about Doctor Who, because that is what we're going to do, I thought I would ask you if you actually remembered seeing Doctor Who start. Did you see it back in the very early days of the show?
I did. I was 10. 63, is that right?
Yeah.
I was 10. 6 or 3. And so I was very disappointed that it wasn't on the Friday because Kennedy got shot. And then it was on the Saturday instead. So I knew it was coming and I was looking forward to it. And it became my absolutely, #1 program. And, if my parents said, oh, we're going to Granny's for tea on Saturday, I said, well, I'm not going. Because she hasn't got the television, we've got to watch Doctor Who. And so I did go up with it. First time I saw the Daleks, they frightened the life out of me, and I hid behind the sofa. So eventually to come to sort of blow one up in Graham's episode was like complete closure. It's like you, Grahame.
Yes, I remember and being excited watching this program. I did stay with it and watched it, and I remember being scared and loving it. I didn't stay with Doctor Who until I actually started working at the BBC, so it didn't hook me as much as I thought it would.
I'm going to jump to something I was going to ask you later, but you're probably the person with the widest span of actively working on the show. How early did you start on Doctor Who? Who was the doctor when you first did it?
I started working at the BBC as a runner in September the 25th, 1966. And that was the first week that Patrick Troughton played the Doctor, recording. That week was his first recording of an episode of Doctor Who. And I was put on it as a trainee runner, being shown the ropes by another runner, a more senior runner, to know how to do the job that was expected of me. And of course I met Patrick and Annika and I think it was Michael Craig at that stage, who I knew from, I was a child actor and I knew him from going up to the same kind of Cockney Herd parts or whatever. So I was onto his case straight away. Michael was someone I knew not very well, but quite well. And that was my first experience of Doctor Who in production.
I knew Mike, I went to Mike's funeral, I was a good friend of Mike's. He's a lovely man. Mike, I went to Mike Fraser's funeral, he was a lovely man.
Yeah.
Just the Mike.
He certainly was.
Yes. You mentioned being boy actor there. You met Colin Spall, who I interviewed you with earlier in the year. I had you and Colin together. You met him when you were a boy actor, so you were both knee-high to Bonnie Langford?
I don't think she'd like that. Yes, I met Colin when we were 10 years old. We went to the same drama school called the Conti Stage School. He had a much more illustrious career than I did. I did do quite well as an actor, as a child actor, but I also had huge stage fright. So theatre was out for me. I did some theatre, but I was absolutely terrified of it. Whereas film and television, I really loved making and being a part of. Colin had this fantastic career and was a child star, and then continued to be a star throughout most of his life. I mean, he never stopped working. He was a very prolific actor. I also met and worked with Fraser Hines. So Fraser and Colin and I were very close friends, 10 or 11, when we were 10 or 11, all together.
Colin always put it that if it was a telly, it was Colin or Fraser would get the part. Everybody knew there's no point Colin or Fraser. If it was a movie, Richard O'Sullivan would get it.
That's probably true, yeah.
You didn't act straight away, did you, Trevor?
No, I didn't. I went off, I decided I needed to do what my parents decided I needed to get some sort of... I didn't act at all really until I went to college, but I did law at college at Kingston Poly, and it so happened that the law students used to put on the pantomime every year. I don't know why, but they did. And so, you know, I ended up getting involved in that. In the first year, I think I pulled the curtains. The second year, I did all the music. And in the third year, I wrote it. I wrote this really rude, revolting pantomime, which most of the time took the piss out of the geography students, who were our big enemies. And that's how and as a result of that, someone from the sort of, there wasn't a drama department, but there was a drama society. Someone said, from there, said, we're doing the Threepenny Opera in Paris next spring. Would you fancy being in it? I said, look, I don't know anything about opera. He said, well, it's not that sort of opera. It's a musical, but it's, you know. And he cast a whole load of friends, all of whom are still friends of mine, funnily enough, for the most part. And we did this amazing show in Paris at a university. And we all went to Paris and had an amazing time. We were all sleeping with one another. We were all, my girlfriend was there, and my best friend's girlfriend. And that was my, you know, first acting experience, really. And I remember when we were rehearsing, we were in a lecture theatre. And I thought to myself, this is good. People do this for a living. People get paid for this. I love this. I've got to do this at some point. So I thought, well, no, what I'll do is I'll finish my legal, you know, I'll get a degree and do all that, so I've got enough to fall back on. And then go to drama school a bit later. And that's why I went to drama school when I was 25, having had done a master's and all that. And then took off from there, really.
So, Grahame, if you met Colin when you were both young chaps, when did you do?
You called me in for a casting for Revelation.
You'd never met before Doctor Who?
I don't think so, no. And I went to this casting, and I was sitting outside waiting to be let in. And then the door opened, and out of the casting walked Pat Roach. Do you remember Pat Roach? Yeah. Pat Roach was in Amida Zainpad. And I thought, he's got to be up for the same part. He's got that, I won't get this. So I sort of, you know, and then sure enough, thankfully, Grahame cast me. So it went from there, really.
So the way I got to know about Trevor was we have a mutual friend at that stage called Michael Cameron.
Yeah.
Or Michael Lewis is his real name, but Michael Cameron, who was my first assistant on Revelation of the Daleks. And while we were thinking about the casting, and in those days, directors and the PA of the production used to get actors to come in, get their availabilities, and then get them to come in, letting the producer know who they were seeing for all the parts. And then we'd meet the actors. He would have, or she, the producer, would have their say as to who they would suggest that we didn't need to see because they didn't like them or whatever. And so we conducted all the auditions, and we recommended who we wanted for the parts. And usually, the producer would, apart from the really big starry part of the lead guest, we would be allowed to have really who we fancied. That's not the case anymore.
No.
It's a slightly different way of working. But Michael said, amidst your list of people, would you put Trevor Cooper down for, I've forgotten the surnames, their names? Takis and Lilt.
Lilt, yeah.
And just to just see it, because I think you'll really enjoy it. And the reason he said that is because I said to the producer in front of Michael, I think Takis and Lilt should be like Lauren Hardy characters. One a big guy and the other a little thin guy.
From with you, Trevor?
Why I honour?
And that's, so I put that, we had a photograph in Spotlight to be able to see, and I thought, yeah, that was my idea of an Oliver Hardy kind of character. I thought Trevor looked really smashing for that, and apart from I didn't know him, I'd have to meet him. And we met, and it is true, we didn't meet Pat Roach, but you would just, I mean, we just got on. I just liked the look of Trevor, and I liked the way he played the reading. So, fortunately for me, John Nathan Turner allowed me to have both Trevor and Colin for those 2 parts. They fitted exactly the bill that I thought the character should be in, and also, so did John, so we were very lucky there.
How different is it these days now, casting directors and so from an acting side, how different is it when you get fired?
Well, it's, you know that just because you've had a meeting, say, with the director and the casting director, and you think, oh, that's gone well, you know that that's not going to be the end of it. It's got to go, you know, beyond. And there's certainly at the BBC, for example, there was a period when, you know, when people like Mal Young were there, Mal Young would have to say so on every bit of casting that went through it. And he was sort of head of drama.
Yeah.
And so he had a sort of, you know, he could suggest people, he could block people and things like that, you know. Which made it difficult. So quite often, whether you were casting something was depending on someone you'd not met. You know, it was someone who had got an opinion from from afar, as it were. But thankfully, you know, I mean, I hadn't got on well with Grahame, and then Grahame suggested me for Star Cops, so our relationship continued, you know. But it is very different now. You know, it's not. If you're lucky enough to have a meeting, most of the time you have to do self-tapes. You know, if you're lucky enough to have a meeting, you know, if you get on well with them, you're not necessarily going to get the part, you know.
And how different is it as a director to have the casting director dealing with all this?
I mean, I've got used to it, so I don't moan about it. Well, I moan about it here, but I don't. Because I want a job. I want to keep working. But the situation, there are 2 complications. There are 3. First, the casting of actors is done by self-taping, and as a director, I want to meet the actor. I want to meet a whole bunch of actors for the different parts, and I want to be able to see whether not only do they enjoy the reading and make a reading and take direction. If I say, why don't you play it? Can we do it again, but you play this scene with this thought in your mind as you're coming in, or could you make him more or her more this, that, or whatever it is I had in my mind. Not because you're going to play it that way, but just to see how well the actor takes on that note and interprets the part. Even to get it wrong, it's just the trying and wanting to see immediately what you can do, because in television, which is the game I'm in, it's fast. You haven't got time to muck about. You need to make a suggestion. It gets taken up and you'll be able to say, I want that, let's try that, let's play that. So the first problem is the casting of somebody is done by self-taping. A casting director may be asked to reduce those self-tapings to 2 or 3 people if you're lucky. A producer, an executive producer, will be above you saying not any of them, or yes, those 3, and you might be able to meet the actors because you as a director have got to do it, work with them. But it's not always the case. It may be, book him, don't have those 2, and you're told who you're going to have. And you've chosen the best 3 maybe, but you don't know them. The second problem is, the day comes when you're going to, if you don't have a read-through, which often happens, so you don't meet the actor till the day you start shooting, the actors turn up on the set, they have an idea well, those that are experienced will have an idea of how to bring the character to life straight away, what they're going to offer you, and how they've interpreted the character. You might have had a phone conversation with those people to say, discuss where the characters come from or whatever, if you're lucky. But often you just meet them on the day and you're doing a scene together. The first scene it may be with a new character in the series that you're doing, and you've got to see what they're going to do, and at the same time you as a director have to plan how to shoot that scene, not knowing the actors or knowing the scene, really, the set very well. But you do it from plans, and you've got to come up with an idea of how that day is going to go, how you're going to do all these scenes, and quickly rehearse with the actors. We're talking a scene of a minute and a half, 2 minutes. You need to get it nailed down within 15 minutes. You then show the crew, they all come in, because they're all having a cup of tea while you're on your own with the actors. They then come in and watch the scene, and then you say, right, the way I want to cover this is, and you discuss all the shots quickly while all the actors then leave the set and go and get made up and finish off their costume, whatever. You have time then to talk to the crew and tell them what you dream of, how you're going to shoot. You have to plan it. Well, often, an actor will come in and they play it a totally different way, not the way you want at all, and you've got to try and undo that without destroying their performance and their personality and their involvement. And that's how you do it. I can't tell you, sometimes you're very lucky, most of the time it works very well. But that's how programs are made, all of them. They're all made the same way. Some with money do have a tiny bit more time in the day to actually shoot the thing. So you might give them a bit more time of rehearsal. But most are done that way, that's it. I find that extraordinary. How do you teach an actor, a young actor at drama school? That's what you've got to do these days. The self-taping, so learn how to direct yourself and give the best you can. And also you need to come in with a plan of how you're going to play it, because you're not going to get any direction till the day. It's very tough for an actor.
It's also interesting, having done 2 Doctor Who's, having done Revelation and also Robot the Sherwood, that how they were put together was very, very different. I mean, Revelation was, apart from the sort of prologue, was all in the studio, wasn't it? Yeah. I think, yeah. Whereas Robots was all on film. We were outside on location. A lot of the time we were in Carnarvon Castle, one of those castles in Wales. A lot of the time we were in sort of Robin Hood's hideout in the middle of a forest somewhere, you know. And, you know, when we did Revelation, we had 2 weeks rehearsal before we went into the studio.
We had
something like
5
that.
days of rehearsal.
We used 5 days of rehearsal, and then we had technicals and all that. But we were at the, they used to call it the Acton Hilton, didn't they? The rehearsal rooms in North Acton, a great sort of 7 or 8 story block. On each floor there were like 2 or 3 massive studio spaces. And I remember once I was doing two things for the BBC, and they were both rehearsing on the same floor. One was the first ever episode of Casualty, and the other one was A Singing Detective. And I popped from one, and I'm just going to my other job, I'll be back in a minute. You know. And so I was able to, but we had these full rehearsals, you know. So we knew what was going on in the scenes. Robots of Sherwood, we didn't have any rehearsals at all. I think we might, excuse me, we might have met up. The people who were playing Robin Hood's Merry Men, I have a feeling we met up. There was a sort of get together, just to sort of get to know each other. But we didn't rehearse anything until we actually filmed it. You know, and that's the way filming is done. You know, you have a line run, you go away, and then you shoot it. Yeah. You know.
Revelation then, having got your cast, you've gone through your process that you were allowed to do then. You've got Trevor, Colin, you see both perfect for both those. Alexa Sale, Eleanor Brun, Jenny Thomason, William Gaunt. It's quite a cast you managed to get.
It's a big handful.
But that's down to you. That's your sort of expertise, getting these brilliant people.
Well,
I know JP would be involved.
JP was, but we got on. I was very, as a director, I was very close to John, and we got on very well. To my mind, I've been told since that he had taggers for me, but I don't know whether that's true or not. We got on very well, certainly with the productions and certainly with the casting. And I got most of the people I really dreamed of having. They were all big egos. There was no one nasty or evil, but they all had egos. Everybody, Trevor, Colin, all had their own me's. But I also enjoyed, I think all of them. There was one person that slightly, I'd not say I didn't get on with, but it was awkward with one character. But the rest of the cast were absolutely delightful to work with. And all wants to be there and all wants to make this work. It's a very strange story. And it's over the top. Eric Sable, who wrote it, wrote characters that were, I mean, he wrote very well, he wrote a fantastic script, but they were all liable to be really over the top. It was very easy to go over the top. But everybody in it, I hope you all agree, just held it just back enough to make it plausible. Because they were very rich, loud, rich characters.
I remember we were all sent away after one technical rehearsal, where everyone had gone that little bit too far, and there were a few too many interior gags. Perry running around saying all these corridors look the same, and things like that. You know, those sort of gags that only Doctor Who aficionados would know. And John Nathan Turner came in and said, "No, you're going to have to cut that. You're going to cut that back." And that, do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah, but it was still very enjoyable.
Yeah, it was.
There was lots of fun and very, very little time to complete all the stuff. And there was plenty of complexity in it.
Colin and Nicola were doing a pantomime at the same time, so it all had to be sort of written around. So they're on film only for episode 1. And so did it ever feel at any point of we're actually sort of shot of Colin and Nicola, or did it all sort of just come together?
Not at the time, because I had my work cut out to get all of it done at the time. So I didn't miss particularly. They weren't in every scene. I mean, I think they came in much more towards the end.
They don't meet anybody until
the first
That's right.
episode.
They've
Very,
been
yeah.
quite a long time. Yeah.
It's all about the guests. It's only when it came to the edit that I realised, oh, blimey, this is all about the guests. I was just so involved in planning, making sure we could get it all done, all the smashing ideas I thought were smashing, I hope we would get. I wasn't aware that they weren't in as much as they should have been. Until we came to the edit, that was it.
Yeah. Right.
And then I realised how much this story was all about Joe Bell and his merry crew.
But I think in a way that allowed such a great richness of guest characters, because actually they could get more focus.
Yes,
and
and more time in rehearsal, yes.
Alexis Sale. I don't know that. Is it true he didn't give you anything until the cameras rolled? Is that right?
He's a very funny man, and I really love the idea that we got him to come and play the DJ. The problem was throughout the whole of rehearsal, so we had 5 days of rehearsal. The first 3 days you had to nail it, you had to be what it was going to be, and then during the next couple of days I could finalise the camera script, so because that had to be typed up and all the camera cards with all the shots on had to be manufactured. So you had to get it really sorted out by the Tuesday night. Wednesday you hand all that in. On Thursday you're polishing. And I think you showed the producer technicians saw it on the Thursday, came and watched in the rehearsal room the shape of the whole thing, and discussed all the technicalities and strange things you might need that are not normal for a normal studio. And then on the Friday, the producer would come and watch the run through, especially for him or her, and then there'd be notes. I'd have half an hour with the producer and he would give me notes on all the performances or whether scenes were working or not. And on this Friday, and we all were worried, I was worried, but I had more faith in John Nathan Turner. And he said, "I'm really worried, Grahame. what's Alexis Sale doing? He's doing nothing. He's not playing the DJ, he's just playing flat. I think we need to recast. I said, on Friday afternoon, there's no way we can recast his character to be able to shoot it this Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And he promises me, because I've asked him over and over again, you must show me once how big you're going to make it, because I don't know whether it's in wide shots, close-ups, or I don't know quite how to shoot this, because I don't know how big you're going to play it. He said, oh no, it's going to be fun, you're going to love it, but I'm not going to show you anything till the day. I'm going to be in trouble. And I think the producer went agree, and he said, well, you'll have to agree, because, and he held us to ransom, really, unless we wanted to recast. And I said to John, we cannot recast, we have to live with, trust him, but we know he's going to come up with something good, because he's ever so good, he's a funny man. And he did. Well, to me he did. So John had to swallow his pride, and really was saying to me, well, it's on your head, mate, if this goes wrong, it's all down to you. And he came in, when it was the studio, he came in and gave the most extraordinary performance. It was large and over the top, but I allowed that to happen, and John fortunately agreed just to let him go, and then we'll edit it down and put it back or whatever in the edit. And that's what happened. And I think he came up with such a wonderful character. I'm glad we took a deep breath and let him do it.
Just find it fascinating that everybody's just got to trust. It's just not giving me anything.
Oh, it was terrifying.
Actually, speaking of terrifying, that's good, isn't it? Good.
Segue.
Just before Revelation show aired, the show had been put on hiatus, and it wasn't going to get made for an extra 6 months, on grounds of being too violent. Now, in Revelation, you've got Colin has a flick knife, talks about marking somebody, you've got Davos' fingers on the floor, you've got hypodermic needles. Slightly worried that I may not fit the time slot that it was going to go out.
No, I didn't give it. Well, I did give it thought, because John. Well, he's shot a very thin line. He was very aware of Mary Whitehouse and having a huge voice in complaining about violence, and at the same time wanting. It was a period when there was a certain amount of. You couldn't get away with any of it now at all. It would just be until certain hours of the day, you'd be lucky then.
5:20 Revelation.
5:20. But we were allowed to show it, and it went out. I tried to shoot it as tastefully as possible, but I mean, I also wanted it to be horrific, like Doctor Who's meant to be. You hide behind the sofa door. But it is violent. I mean, I am surprised now how far we got away with that.
You're very lucky, Trevor, and normally in an Eric Sayward script, very, very few characters last to the end of the story.
That's true. I think Colin and I, apart from obviously the Doctor and Nikki, were the only people who survived, I think, but just about.
Davos escapes, but that's about.
Davos escapes, returned, yeah, but
Thank God.
yeah, but no, we were quite proud of the fact that we survived it. Good stuff.
Now you worked together just a couple of 2 years later or so on Star Cops. Now, I was going to ask, but I think you just said that. You do the second block before you come in to direct. But you said Grahame Castro in it.
Yeah, well, because I think there were two directors involved there. There was Grahame and a guy called Chris Baker. And basically, I think probably both you and Chris came up with ideas for the casting. So who was producing it?
Evgeny Gridner.
Evgeny Gridner, of course, yeah. And so, they were both coming up with ideas. And so, although I knew that, Grahame, when he came, wouldn't be coming on till the sort of 4th episode, I think it was. No, it was still, you put a word in for me. I think I'd met Evgeny and whatever, and everything worked out. I was If I remember rightly, I was doing some theatre in Manchester or something, and didn't I have to come down and rehearse at the first morning or something like that, yeah. There was some whole thing where I had to sort of, it was all a bit, it was quite difficult, you know, to organise, but it worked out.
So you'd been making it for 3 episodes, 9 days.
I think something that I should have carried on there. I think what happened was Chris and I were both booked at exactly the same time, but my block started a good 3 episodes later. So although we started at the same time, it was that way because we all needed to be on the same boat, on the same page. On the same page with how the show should look, the sets, which was meant to be 50 years from that now, in fact, 50 years ahead of its time, set on the moon and Mars, etc., where it was assumed that we had space stations and bases on both planets, etc., and you could travel backwards and forwards quite naturally and neatly as a police series out in space. So it needs to be with both our kind of attention to it. But Chris started his shooting first, and I think he made the first 3 episodes. And and then I did my 3 episodes. And then there was another 3, and then another 3. Eventually, I lost 1 episode because of a strike. But
that's right.
But anyway, we got 9 episodes, or 11 episodes out of the whole thing by the time the year was over. I started shooting late, but the casting was done as a committee with the beginning. And in those days, we could put our tuppence worth in it, and the producer and the head of the department, because it's a brand new series, would have their say and be a part of the casting.
Did you notice any difference between the 2 styles? When you've done a block and then you go into the second one.
Yeah. What was interesting was that because Chris had kept it quite sort of well lit, and the Star Cops office was fairly bare. I mean, apart from there were desks and computers, but by the time Grahame came on, Grahame said, "Well, surely you'd have made it a bit like your own, you know." And so, Pal Kenzie had a poster of a koala bear, didn't she, or something? And someone would have a plant, and there were bits. So it became a bit personalised. And the other thing was, I remember you saying that you got the lighting down to the lowest it had ever been, the lowest state it had ever been in a BBC studio. So most of the lights are coming from computer screens and bits here and there. Yeah. But there was very little, so you didn't see the set, which is probably just as well, all the time. But the joke was that when we'd finished your block, we went back to Chris's lot, and suddenly the light went back up again. The koala bear disappeared, and all the bits in the office. So they had to search around all the trash cans to find them all because they'd been chucked out. So we had to put them all back in again, because otherwise it looked a bit old. But there was a difference. It certainly looked different. I thought, I mean, he's sitting here with me now, but I thought Grahame got it right, very much so. I think we all thought that at the time.
How many people have seen Star Cops? Well, actually, it's quite a good mix, actually, for something that didn't, I feel like didn't harm.
Yeah.
And how many people listen to the Big Finish audios?
A few, yeah, not quite as many, but yeah.
So it still lives on.
It still lives on. And you barely knew anything about it. I mean, you knew it was going on.
Yeah, no, I found out from, I think David, I worked with David on David Calder on Casualty.
Right.
About 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever it was when you first started that. And he said, "Oh, do you know that I've been invited and we're actually starting it." And I forgot her name, Linda Newton, who played one of the characters in it, in Australia. She was coming over. Would we like to meet her? Would I like to come and join them, have a meal? Because they're going to start doing audio recordings of Star Cops. No, that's the first I knew.
30 odd years after the television series had gone out.
And 9 episodes went out on a bad time slot on BBC Two, and 30 years later they still do it.
30 years later, so, you know. And David and I often laugh at the idea of him and I, who are both very lame and can't walk very far, running around on moon bases, zapping people and firing doors. You know, we keep up to kick ourselves. Because David walks the stick most of the time. We wouldn't get on very well, I think, on the moon.
Well, you'd be floating.
We would be floating. But, no, it's lovely that it's had this, you know, second life.
Excellent. There is a show I want to ask you both about. You didn't actually work on it together, but you did both work on it. Inside Number 9. So I wanted to you do the first one because it was going to be multi-camera. Is that the reason it came to you?
Yes. Adam Tandy, who was the producer, got this script which required multi-camera studio recording as if it was being made in the 70s. His first idea as a producer was, if the equipment still existed, why don't we make this? I mean, and the two boys who wrote the script and who are the stars, why don't we see if the equipment still is available and working? Because they knew there was a company that still had and kept in good trim the 1970s. I think there were Link cameras, big, huge, multi-turreted kind of cameras. Or no, they had zooms, but they were. We got into zooms by then, but they were the genuine article of the period. And if they broke down or were crap, that's the way the show would look, because it would be genuine to that period. So that was the first thing. Who can we get to make it? And yes, and they Adam knew Russell T. Davis, so he rang him, and Russell had worked with me both on multi-camera studios as well as doing the new Doctor Who. So he knew that I could do, I had to both. And Adam said to Russell, what do you think about if we were approach Grahame to do multi-camera studio? Do you think he still remembers how to do it? And it was Russell who said, absolutely, book him, because he's the man for you to do the comedy side of that and to get what you need out of the multi-camera, which I'm grateful to him for that. And then Adam rang me out of the blue and said, I knew Adam a bit, but I didn't know, I'd never worked with him. And he said, I'd like you to come up and meet the executive producer, and we're thinking of offering you something, we just need to meet and have a chat. And so I went up and met them, I think,
we worked this out today, but the one I was doing, which was in the second series, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, of the trial of Elizabeth Gash, which was the second sort of medieval witch hunter times. And we were filming most of it in this sort of giant shed, really. And it was raining quite a lot of the time. And there was one day when I looked out the door and there was Grahame. And he'd obviously come in to talk about a future one that he was doing.
Yeah,
and we only just made that connection today.
I met them in a production caravan in a really muggy, wet area. Where it was clogging into, it was a horrible place to work, to walk into. But anyway, and I was offered the part, once we talked, I was offered the job there and then. So it was because they knew I had, I wouldn't say they were great skills, but I was skillful enough to remember how to do multi-camera studios.
And it's interesting you say, because of your comedy skills as well, because I think a lot of Doctor Who fans think, the case of Andazani and the Davos and they think of you as being the serious star. But Revelation is very funny.
Yeah.
You did the New Statesman, you did sort of half of the New States, you've done a lot of comedy. You did probably the biggest comedy episode of Doctor Who, the Unicorn and the Wasp.
Yeah.
But I think people tend to think, yes, Grahame, dark, grim things. You've done so much comedy.
The trouble that people don't know about me is that I get the giggles very quickly, which is going to happen here, I'm sure. But when there's always a moment on every day of when I'm shooting, there's always a moment when I sit there watching the monitor and wondering, how did I get to be here doing this? Because I have no qualifications whatsoever, apart from a bit of life, and I went to drama school, I came out with nothing. I didn't have a document that said, he's been to this, that and the other, or you can tap dance or whatever. I had nothing. I had to rely on learning my craft as I went along, basically. So I don't know, and I always get, and also if something happens that it goes wrong, that makes you laugh, I get the giggle straight away. I've ruined more takes in my life.
I know, but sometimes we deliberately make it.
I like comedy. I don't want comedy to seep into big dramatic scenes, but when I laugh, it's natural. I don't do it on purpose. I don't want to ruin the take, but I also know from experience that the atmosphere, unless it's really wasted time, we're really in trouble. The atmosphere is brilliant on the set because they know Harper's at it again. You know, he's destroying the scene. We've got to do it again. But it kind of calms everything down.
One of the things that's great about Grahame is he's, particularly if you're in the studio, Grahame's on the floor with you. A lot of directors go up in the box, and you don't actually see much of them when the thing is being recorded. Grahame is on the floor with you, you know, with the actors and all that. That's much appreciated, actually, because it's really good to have you there, even if you are giggling. You know.
Peter Davison always said that as well. He said that was his last of his run as well. He said, suddenly we had a director on the studio floor.
Yeah.
He says, and it just made all the difference.
Makes all the difference.
It's really so because I remember doing Juliet Bravo, which was a female-led police series in the 80s. And I remember one of the actors, one of the coppers, said to me in a lunch break, "Why are you on the floor all the time?" And I said, "Because I feel much better. I don't want to be stuck up in this box." When I could see on the floor, I could see the problems that were getting very quickly, both for the actors and also if it's the camera moves or the tension. And I also can give great notes to you, or not great notes, but that's so I'll give notes there and then. They can't be misinterpreted by the first. You get them direct from me and we can discuss them very quickly. And you said, but I bloody hate it because you're taking away my time with the crew. You're interfering with that. So there are some actors who hated it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm just amazed at something Peter Davison used to say about when the note would come down and then the floor manager would have to translate it. He said, normally they would soften it. But they'd say, but there was one person who would always like to say, well, tell him to bring it down a bit. And he'd go, he says you're way over the top. I got my time, I thought we were on until 5 o'clock, but I've already had 5 minutes to get off, and I haven't looked at the audience to see if anybody'd like to ask a question, so there's a hand straight away.
That's Grahame, about the casting of Christopher Gage in Adversary, how that came about, what your memories of it were?
I'm going to do this very quickly. So, when I first joined the BBC as a runner, one of my jobs in 1966-67 was to go down to Bristol to do a music programme called Music for You. Eric Robinson, who was an old-fashioned conductor with a BBC orchestra and a choir and whatever, and we did music down the middle of the road as well. So a bit of Tchaikovsky, and it was that kind of stuff. And there was always a pas de deux in the middle of the evening with Christopher Gable every week, who was a star ballet dancer at that stage, and a prima ballerina from all over the world who came to dance with them, something from the Nutcracker or whatever. And Christopher and I, he was slightly older than me, but we were the youngest people on the set. So every Friday night after, or Saturday night after the recording in Bristol, we go clubbing. So I got to know Christopher over those 6 or 8 weeks very, very well. Mixed to years later, I'm now a director. we can't get Mick Jagger, we can't get David Bowie because they're on world tours or whatever. But I needed an actor who had his voice. I wanted a deep voice, a rich tones, and I wanted someone very elegant, balletic. And that's the clue. Because I was looking for an actor to play Sharaz Jek, who was a man who was in a mask. It was Phantom of the Opera. He was in a mask throughout the whole of the story because he'd been burnt and tortured and almost driven mad to death. And when eventually that mask is taken off, there's still another mask, which is the horror of what's actually happened to him. So whoever's going to play that was never going to be seen for their true self, other than this horrific burnt face, as it were. Who were we going to get to play this? And discussing with John Nathan Turner, I said, the problem is we can't, which actor, what star is going to say yes? Because they're never going to be seen, ever. And we tried to go for Mick Jagger and David Bowie and others. And eventually I said, what about Christopher Gable, who's this fantastic ballet dancer, who's now an actor? He'd given up ballet because he'd grown too old. And so John Nathan, well, if you think you can get him, well, I don't think he'll come and play with you. And I said, well, maybe because we're a big film star. So I said, I've got his phone number. I'm going to ring him direct and just see whether I can send him the script. So I rang him. He said, well, no. And I'm going to tell you I dread to say, but he used to call me Twinkle. Because that was a nickname I got from a very camp producer that I worked with when I met Christopher. He's always Twinkle around my bottle of water, please. So I rang him and he said, oh, hello Twinkle, gosh, we haven't heard from you for a long time.
So Sharaz Jek sounding like
anyway, I told him the story. He said, I am free, send me the script. If it's as good as I think you say it is, I will consider it, but I need to see the script. Don't be surprised if you say no. So we sent him the script, and he read it the next day and came back and said, this is fantastic. I absolutely love the character. I'll come and play it. So John said, let's book him straight away before he changed his mind. And he did. And what you see is what we got, which was a fantastic performance.
It is absolutely one of the best pieces of casting in Doctor Who ever.
Yeah. That's what I
I know you directed lots and lots of New Who. I know you've done so many other things. But between you gave us The Caves of Anzani and Revelation of the Balance. And I'd like to thank you both for that. And I'd like to thank you both for being here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the raffle and the final summary
Top of it stops. Make a sprint. Gives the thing to the main I'm heading off. Hello and goodbye. Hello and goodbye. Oh yeah, I've had it. Yeah, I've always said that. I was to get it right. It is, yes. I'll get your house moving process. I'll put it in the post on Monday. Smash it in. Uniform. Genuine.